This is Top Landing Gear. Hello and welcome to Top Landing Gear, Series 3, Lockdown 3. That's a series per lockdown, so here's to many more. And may I wish you a belated Happy New Year. I say New Year, I say happy. Not always easy in the current circumstances. So we thought we'd try and help out with an episode devoted to films, books, television programs, websites, and maybe even other podcasts that might appeal to the aviation-minded out there who've had just a bit too much enforced spare time on their hands recently, rather like the four of us on Top Landing Gear. And we are pop superstar, singer-songwriter, and a guru to up-and-coming bands. From Scouting for Girls, it's Roy Stride.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Roy. There's our pilot, currently with the airlines, formerly with the RAF, where he was on helicopters. Less of a guru, more a gorilla. James Cartner.
Hello, Rob.
Hello, James. And next, someone who, on his own agricultural fencing website, is described as a bear of a man, more grizzly than polar. It's my brother, Jez Curley.
Grrr.
Convincing. And finally, Jez's brother, broadcaster, actor, more of a sleek stallion than a bear or a gorilla. It's me, Rob Curling. Hello, everybody. It's great to be talking again.
Yes, hello.
Yes, it is.
Isn't it lovely?
It's been brilliant.
Now, just very quickly before we go on, I know it was a long time ago, but how was Christmas? Because I gave you each some very special presents. Jez and James, you had little aeroplane models to make. I bet they're still in their boxes. Roy, I gave you the DVD of those magnificent men in their flying machines. I bet that hasn't seen the light of day. Come on, be honest.
I did try and play it, but we don't have a DVD player that works at the moment.
Tell me you did. Oh, I see. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but I need to dig it out. So I've been meaning to watch it.
I did spend most of Christmas Day
Yes.
trying to find a dark cupboard to put that Chinook in, where it has been shoved under a load of other stuff and will stay forevermore.
Well, there's gratitude for you. And Jez,
I can't remember you ever giving me anything. Sorry, Buzz. What was that?
It's a Daily Mail Air Race Harrier. Come on.
I've no idea where it is. I'll dig it out.
That was a really good
Try and
present.
make it
That was a
for
great
next
present.
year's.
Yeah, we all
first
wanted
pod
that
of the
one.
year. Sorry, mate. Thanks, though. Really kind of you.
I got the crappy DVD. You may as well give me a VHS.
Oh, bloody, what's this?
Not as bad as a Chinook, though, is it?
What did I get
from us?
What did I get?
Nothing.
What did I get from you guys?
Joy.
Absolutely.
The joy of seeing our faces smiling back at you.
James, let's move on into the new year. I want to ask you what your favourite news item has been so far this year.
Favourite news item?
Yeah.
There have been so many.
There's one in particular I'm thinking of involving a Chinook.
Now, I am never one to kick a fleet when it's down. I believe a Chinook did get stuck in a field. And I think that's a very, it's one of those things that just happens. And there was no sniggering, there was no laughing, there was no ridicule, just some guys stuck in a field and they had to get a crane to take it out. So
Stuck in the mud, wasn't
Your
it?
Facebook page would say somewhat differently to that, James.
No, that was all banter, but ironic.
Ironic banter.
Yes. So it looked like I was reveling in the fact that they'd had a few mishaps, but actually I was really feeling for them.
Yeah, because the very same thing had happened to you, of course, in your Puma when you accidentally closed the throttles at height.
Yeah, mine was
Standing in a field and
my
you fell
Puma was
over.
stuck in a field more with the blades stuck into the mud on its side.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it was a similar. I think it was a similar field.
Yeah.
Roy, just tell us, what's your idea for this podcast exactly?
Well, I thought just as everyone was locked down, the idea would be to say hello to everybody, explain that Series 3 is coming as soon as I've got round to going through all the interviews, which we did from Lincoln, which should be in the next month. I think as we come out of lockdown, Top Landing Gear 3 will come out of the hangar.
Lovely.
But I just thought it would be good to give some other aviation fans some film, book, TV, web reviews about things which maybe they've, maybe some slightly left of field things for them to do in the last dying weeks of lockdown?
Don't say dying.
Well,
We're all getting the jab now. There is hope.
Lockdown.
Yeah, right. Brilliant idea. So listen, we'll have some recommendations for you in a moment, but we'll also...
Rob, sorry to interrupt.
No,
Speaking of the jabs, you must have had the jab by now, have you?
Well, I know what you're getting at, James. What, because I'm in that age category, 80 plus?
I think everyone over 80's now had it, haven't they?
Including Rob.
Yeah, and actually, James, I want to tell you, I have had the jab. I got the dark blue, the Oxford, the AstraZeneca.
Did you?
Yeah, very proud of that
Very
one. Yeah. Yes, so we will, of course, amongst our, if you finish, James, our regular features, we will have Ask James, our chance to hear more from James. Can't wait for that. Your chance and ours, of course, to ask James anything about the world of aviation, but probably more lockdown focused in this uplifting episode. And
you haven't heard the quick facts yet.
No, well, I was going to say, James has got his quick facts, which...
There's nothing uplifting about them whatsoever.
Great, well, can't wait. I'm sure the way you deliver them will have us in stitches.
No, that won't help.
Well, I'll tell you what will help. Towards the end of this podcast, we will have the highlight of this and every podcast.
The end.
The goodbyes.
The quiz. The quiz. We're going to have a quiz. So just before we get going, we're recording this episode in mid-February 2021, not long after the death of Captain Sir Tom Moore. So we thought we'd like to dedicate this episode to his memory. He was such an inspiration to everybody, I think, and did it with great humour, dignity, and humility, basically everything the four of us lack. So, Sir Tom, this is for you, although I think you probably deserve an awful lot better.
Yeah.
So here's to...
Well done, Sir Tom.
Sir Tom. Well, what a man. James, let's ask you some questions then about COVID and how it's been affecting the aviation industry, how it's looking going forward. It's all pretty bleak at the moment, isn't it?
I think bleak is one word of you could use, and a lot of words that are even worse than that could also be used. It's a very trying time for the aviation industry, particularly with restrictions coming on quarantine now, the enforced hotel quarantine, which from whatever countries you're coming in, which require that, adds at least 1,700 quid to your bill, and 10 days in a hotel somewhere. So that's not helping. I believe earlier today, the leader of the Scottish Parliament said something about you might be able to book a staycation this summer, but don't think about going abroad, which isn't really what we want to hear in the industry. And there have been murmurings from Downing Street as well about not bothering to book a summer holiday, which is all, again, it's not going to help us out. But the vaccine thing, there is... Hopefully, we're at least the beginning of the end now, and we can see something to aim for. But it's a tough time, and there is not a lot of flying going on, certainly not in my life, and just passengers aren't going anywhere. And Easter's coming up. That would obviously have been a hope that we could get something by that. I don't think that's going to happen. The hope is that by mid to late summer, things will start moving on the holiday front and the international front.
Jim, would you say it's looking bleaker now than it was this time last year?
I think it's because we've weathered it for so long now, and there's no obvious corner coming. It's looking a bit bleaker now, and there seem to be fewer people flying now than there were during towards the end of the last lockdown one. So it's hard to see exactly when it's going to start coming back, and I think we are bracing ourselves for probably another year of massively reduced travel.
Goodness me! Of course, one of the knock-on effects of having fewer passenger flights, I think it's now becoming clearer to people who didn't realise this, is the amount of freight and cargo that will be carried on passenger flights there aren't those flights now, and not nearly so numerous. So
yeah.
a lot of freight isn't now making its way around the world.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right there. But what some airlines are doing is they're putting on a lot more dedicated freight flights. So some routes that we use for passengers are now being used purely for freight. And even some companies have taken the seats out of their aircraft and they are flying pure freighters, which is filling up a bit of the shortfall. But you're absolutely right. There are fewer opportunities for freight to fly on passenger flights. So that is having a reduction where they can't sustain it with freight only. So there will be an inevitable knock-on.
When did you last fly, James?
I landed on Christmas Eve.
Oh my God, that's your last flight?
Yeah. So I've done some recurrency sims just to keep me ticking over since then. And it's looking like I might fly again in March.
Wow. Jim, that brings me on to another thing that I was reading about is the increase in incidents due to rustiness. And this is on commercial flights, such as one example, forgetting to switch on the de-icer and some potentially slightly more serious things as well, which I really don't understand because you have a checklist. So surely if you have a checklist, all these things get looked at, don't they?
You do, absolutely. And from what I know, I've heard of nothing serious that's happened, but there are. It's like if you're not used to driving your car and you come in and it just takes that little bit longer to get yourself reacquainted with where all the positions of the switches are, and certain things in scans are missed, but then they're normally tidied up by the checklist. So where you would do an item and then check it with a checklist, people are forgetting to do those little items first. And they're all being swept up more than they were. So I think there is a rustiness. People are not flying when you're used to flying, every day for a month. And all of a sudden that's reduced to once or twice a month. There's bound to be some issues, and it's a matter of for the airlines and for the pilots themselves just to manage that. And the big thing is admitting that look, I'm not going to be as sharp as I normally would be a year ago because I'm just out of practice.
Blimey. But presumably the sim sessions should reduce that.
Yeah, so the sim sessions are there to make sure we are going through it. And it's amazing. I did a recurrency sim recently, and it just takes a while just to get your head back in that space and thinking in 3D and putting an aircraft where it wants to. Nothing dangerous is happening from what I understand, but it's just getting yourself to do things in the most efficient manner.
Well, there have been instances you've heard of aircraft that have been in storage for not that long a period, and you suddenly find the pitot head isn't working, which of course reduces your airspeed on the airspeed indicator because there are insects nested in it. I mean, it sounds incredibly basic. I thought you cover those over with whatever.
Yeah, normally when aircraft are in storage, that sort of thing is covered. But insects in pitot heads has happened whether the aircraft have been in storage or not. It only takes an overnight to get a nest in a pitot head. So it does happen from time to time. It's rare. But yes, this is the other thing we have to think, that the aircraft are being maintained while they're in storage, but they're not being used. So it's just everybody is taking that extra bit care. And so things are happening a lot more slowly than they would normally because everyone is taking those extra minutes or even hours just to make sure the aircraft is completely ready to go. I don't think it's dangerous, but it's just something that everyone's watching.
Yeah, but the longer an aircraft is out of use, does it become more expensive and more difficult to get it back in to an airworthy state?
As far as expense is concerned, it's that can depend on a number of things. Often the lease, part of the lease agreement is that an aircraft has to be flown so many hours every month. And so if you're not flying it that often, you have to pay penalties, which does sound a little bit weird. You think you'd be there'd be a bonus for not using it, but it actually works the other way in aircraft sometimes. So
why is that? I don't understand why.
It's just to make sure that the aircraft don't just sit there, because aircraft sitting on the ground, but they're built for constant use, because it's such a sort of asset rich industry, you try and use your assets all the time, and when they're not being used constantly, that then leads to degradation. So, and if you're not using an aircraft, you have to service it anyway. So there are standard servicing periods. So has to have something done every 3 weeks, has to have oil changed every 2 days, that sort of thing. These have to be done whether it's flying or not. So you ideally want your aircraft flying. If they're not, it's costing you money.
And James, just a few other things that have come up in aviation news recently, aside from COVID. The return of the 737 MAX coming back into operations. I don't know how popular a move that would be with passengers.
Well, I think they've supposedly, apparently, have ironed out all the bugs and the issues that it had, which caused those 2 horrific crashes. Supposedly cannot happen again. For those reasons. Anyway, so it is that they've taken it to a standard where the issues it has to have a dual signal from the trim runaway to even get that procedure going in the first place, when before it was an option just to have one signal or a dual signal, and most people went for the cheaper option. So that has been recovered. They have changed the logic in the computer circuits, which is how it deals itself with that sort of trim runaway, and they've retrained the crews and highlighted it to all the crews. So I think that particular part of it should be ironed out, and it's as safe as any 737 now.
Jim, was the final analysis of those accidents, was it all software, or was it a combination of? It's probably being a bit contentious, but was there some pilot error? Not through error intentionally, but because there was poor training, or
the system had changed beyond. So the system on this 737 MAX compared to the older, the NG as it's called, it looked exactly the same, and the checklist said to deal with that problem in the same way. However, there were differences, which so it could bite a lot harder if you didn't follow everything exactly to the new instructions to the letter. And I don't think everyone was aware that there were new instructions. So while I wouldn't say it was pilot error, that there was a pilot aspect to possibly to some of those, but it wasn't. I think they thought they were doing the right thing.
So in isolation, none of those things may have caused a problem, but with all those factors brought together, that was where.
Yeah, I think what it did is it gave the pilots an incredibly difficult situation to deal with. You basically had almost full nose down trim, so that the aircraft had trimmed itself, so it was trying to push the nose forward, and the pilots were pulling back. Once you isolate the system, it should then release that force, but it either wasn't, or they were happy, they re-engaged the system, and it pushed them straight back down again. So I think the jury is still out exactly on the final cause, but it's looking one of those 2 issues.
James, British Airways tweeted quite recently about a new green fuel that they'll be trying out from 2022. Do you know much about this?
Yeah, I had a look into this. They've teamed up with an American company whose name I can't quite remember at the moment, who are producing ethanol from basically it's the leftover products of crops, so straw and chaff, which means that we're not planting we're not planting crops for the production of the alcohol, which is a good thing, and they're using the waste products to make the jet fuel. So it seems like a good thing. It could be, certainly I think it can reduce carbon emissions by 70%, which is obviously a great thing. There are some people say, well, you shouldn't be flying anyway, and that's the way to deal with aviation pollution rather than changing the fuel source. But I think if this is if this works, and it looks like it should do, it's a very positive step, because it doesn't require new planting of, or it doesn't require sacrificing food crops. It's a byproduct, so it should be a good thing.
Would you need?
Well, here's a little stat for you, which isn't actually in my quick facts because it's not really relevant. But globally, in 2019, before the pandemic, the airline industry produced 915 million tons of CO2. So anything that can be done to reduce it is a good thing. However, humans in general produce 43 billion tons of CO2. So there is
each.
Well, James certainly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a conversation to be had there, I guess, isn't there?
Well, Jez, as you've given us a quick fact, do you want to move on and give us your quick facts for this lockdown special?
Well, I'm really happy to. Now, if you were feeling in any way pleased to hear the return of Top Landing Gear and looking forward to being hopefully entertained, this is going to change it all. There's nothing particularly uplifting about these facts, but they are kind of relevant. And once we've done them, we only have to do them once. We can move on and talk about something else. So here are some lockdown quick facts for Top Landing Gear. So I thought it'd be interesting to see what effect the pandemic had on the aviation industry around the world. So here's some stats for you. The number of commercial flights globally, like Jimbo's waist measurement, soared steadily from the early 2000s until 2020 with around 39 million flights a year. But since the pandemic, this figure, like one of James's landing approaches, plummeted to just 16
plummeted. To how many million?
16 million from 39 million.
Wow.
Over the course of a year. And that's the figures I've sort of dredged up from probably November or December.
That's just my wife not going on holidays.
Yeah, that's Top Land. That's Scout of the Girls not touring.
Yes.
And here we go. In terms of passengers, this is a 60% drop in fare-paying customers. In terms of passengers, this means a 60% drop in fare-paying customers from 2.8 billion to 1.8 billion in 2020. And all this means that airlines are burning less fuel, or fewer gallons if you prefer. Fuel consumption has increased every year since 2009 to a whopping Jimbo-sized 96 billion gallons.
This is not just an abuse sort of hour. This is facts.
These are facts combined with abuse, and I'm about to be nice now. Because the pandemic saw fuel consumption shrink like Roy did after he gave up the booze last summer to a svelte 51 billion gallons in 2020. So that's 45 billion gallons less fuel burned. Wow. The pandemic, of course, has had a devastating impact on airlines. And I managed to find 15 airlines that have gone bust in 2020, including, for a while anyway, South African Airways, German Airways, and of course our own Flybe, although some of these businesses have been rescued by governments or bought out by other companies. And so what are the aircraft? From what I can establish, there were about 17,000 aircraft grounded and in storage at the peak of the pandemic last year. And to this can be added permanent retirements from many, but not all, of the fleets of older aircraft, such as Boeing 757s, 767s, MD-88s, Airbus A340s and A380s, and of course the mighty 747. And according to the Air Transport Action Group, worldwide 88 million jobs are supported by the aviation industry. And their research shows that half of these jobs could be lost as a result of coronavirus, with them not really coming back for another 5 or 6 years. James, you might hear different take on those figures.
Yeah. But... No, thanks, Jez. You told me I'm fat, now you told me I'm going to be out of work in a minute, so that's great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's your rather depressing quick facts.
I mean, those figures.
They are facts, or at least they are according to somebody.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, well, and Jez, I mean, those figures are mammoth, aren't they?
They are huge, aren't they? Yeah.
And the problem is aviation in any down turn is nearly always the first to get hit, and is often the last to recover as well. So we are kind of used to it, I suppose. But it's this is really good, and I think the effect of this is going to be slightly longer, just because you need all the countries to get sorted before we can start worldwide travel again.
I had no idea that so many people were employed in or around the 88 million people. employed.
Most of those
within
make my lunch.
aviation. Yes. Clear up the lunch. Yeah, it's incredible. They're stunning figures, aren't they? Massive figures.
Yeah. One other little piece of news as well. In fact, some more has come in today. It's air shows, certainly in the UK. There was a postponement of an air show earlier on, just a few days ago. And in fact, today, on the day we're recording, Riyadh, one of the biggest air shows in the world, has for this year been cancelled, which, so soon. It was due to be in July. So they've already decided to pull the plug on that, which is such a shame. So difficult for the organisers, let alone participants and crowds and fans and all the businesses that rely on the air show entertainments.
I'd love us to do an air show special supporting any air shows that are happening this year. So some of the smaller ones. So if anybody out there wants to promote their air show, however big or small, because I know obviously with my band, we're still hoping that a lot of these festivals are going ahead, and a lot of work is being done now to make sure these events can happen safely with social distancing. So I don't think there's any reason why some air shows couldn't happen. Maybe, I don't know. So if you are putting on an air show or you know somebody who is, please get in touch, and we will do everything we can to help promote it and do a podcast about all the air shows that are still happening in the months when we're allowed out.
Yeah, and we can come along and visit you.
Totally.
And George, of course, we mustn't forget George.
George Smokey Bacon, definitely.
George Smokey Bacon did a great job with his colleagues last year, putting on some air shows, as best they could. So,
well, the Shuttleworth did a car-based one, didn't they?
Yes.
They had all the audience
driving
in their cars with driving air show, which might be this year's theme for air shows.
Yeah. So anybody who's out there trying to make it work, please get in touch, and we will help support and promote the best we can.
Absolutely. And I'm sure they will happen. And there will definitely be stuff to look forward to. But listen, should we really up the ante here and be a little less gloomy about things and suggest maybe some of the films, books, TV shows, webs and pods maybe that people can enjoy in their enforced spare time? We've all sort of chosen our favourites. And let's start with films, first of all. Roy, what have you chosen as your favourite film to pass on to our adoring public?
I didn't go for favourite just because I wanted to try and keep it, maybe stuff, because my favourite is The Battle of Britain. And obviously everyone's seen The Battle of Britain. So I am going for Hurricane, which is a film that came out in 2018 about the pilots of 303 Squadron, the Polish squadron, probably arguably the most successful squadron during the Battle of Britain. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not as good as the Battle of Britain.
No.
It's
seen it.
It was. I think the budget was 10 million, which was more than. There's another film called 303 Squadron, which came out in the same year, which was even cheaper to make.
Yeah.
But my son Freddie loved it, and so he much preferred that to the original Battle of Britain. That got him. Like the Battle of Britain got me into aviation, and I think Hurricane did the same for him. So I think it's about £2 to rent on YouTube. 303 Squadron is free on Amazon Prime, or again about £2 to rent on YouTube, or Amazon. Any number of those things. And for the aviation fan, okay, it's not historically completely accurate, but it does a good job, and it's definitely worth a couple of hours in the evening.
Is that the one with some really terrible CGI?
No, I think you're thinking of 303.
That's 303, is it?
But it, some of it is a bit ropey, but have a glass of wine beforehand.
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
Settle down,
Elements of it are superb, aren't they? Lancaster Skies is another one in the same sort of ilk that I gather hasn't been particularly well.
Well, Lancaster Skies it features Just Jane, which is the Lancaster, which we went to see in Lincolnshire Aviation Museum. Yeah. That film was made for £80,000. Wow. So I just don't think that anybody could. I think it automatically gets 5 stars for that.
Fantastic. What about our pilot? What have you gone for, Jimbo?
Film-wise, again, I'm not sure it's necessarily my absolute favourite, but it's a lovely film. And it was very when I went going through my early RAF training, I watched it with a mate who was working in the city at the time. And he sort of said, God, that's what you do for your job. You're so lucky. And it sort of made me think, yeah. And the film is Air America, which is Robert Downey Jr. And Mel Gibson, I think. And it's just about the setting up. Not quite what I do, no. But it's
what do they crash Pumas?
They crash everything.
They cut that bit for the film. It's too boring.
It's about the setting up of the CIA's own little airline, which they use to get people in and out of different places and move cargo. And it's a fascinating story. It's a really good story, and there's some lovely aviation shots in it. And I think one of the highlights is when one of the guys is a little bit hungover, and so they wake him up by tying his legs to the strop of a helicopter and dangling him through the bush for about an hour. Give it a watch. Every week.
Great recommendation.
Yeah, that's a cracker. Jez, what about you? I think I can probably guess.
Well, I've got 3 as usual. I can't narrow it down.
No.
And they're all pretty obvious, really. So I have to say, given that we're trying to raise everyone's spirits after my rather depressing quick facts.
It's only the way you read them that makes them depressing.
I know. I don't even know why I'm on this pod. I'm really wasting space.
Again, that's another question we've all asked. Carry on.
Well, we know the answer.
Save that one for the quiz.
Okay. Let's see if I can get the answer right. So my favourite film, I think, probably has to be Airplane, just because it makes me laugh a lot, and I can't wait to show it to my kids. I think they're probably old enough, but not sure they'll get all the jokes. There's probably a couple of bits that I need to skip through, and this is aviation, but it's not. It's space. So Apollo 13, which I love. I must have seen that 10 times. I think it's a brilliant film. And I should just saw another one, just because it's so beautifully filmed, was, and we're waiting for its sister film to come out soon, Lancaster, was Spitfire, which Roy and I went to see, as Roy will testify, I blubbed through. I went to see it in the cinema.
I was with you.
Oh, you came to that one?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, you all went to that one. There was a damn bus I went to with Roy.
You couldn't see us because you were crying so much.
I was through my tear-streaked face. So, Airplane, Apollo 13, or Spitfire?
Spitfire is
I'm sure there are lots of better ones, but they're my faves anyway.
Spitfire is stunningly filmed.
Yeah,
absolutely stunning. A bit like you, Jez, I've gone for an absolute obvious one and a few others. In terms of the few others, they're very old films, of course. One was the Sound Barrier, which was a fabulous.
Oh, that's a good film. Yeah,
a fantastic story, very much sort of based on what was going on at de Havilland at the time, and the tragedies as people tried to work out what was going on when you're pushing those limits. It's a brilliant film, 1950s-ish, black and white, but it's got everything. It's fantastic and very much sort of fact-based. There's another lovely film called Out of the Clouds. It's an Ealing film with made by Michael Bulk and Basil Dearden, I think. It's sort of with BOEC strata cruisers in it. And it's a lovely story. There's a bit of romance in there, but it sort of shows London Airport as it was in those days. And the operation really there of BOC, beautiful, really lovely film. But my favourite, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, almost my favourite of any film has to be Those Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines. It's so utterly joyous. Everybody, Roy has got a spare DVD that he won't be watching, so get in touch with him. But I mean, so much of it, most of it was filmed with real aeroplanes. Most of them were beautifully built replicas. There was actually one original aircraft, which I think was the Blackburn monoplane, which is in it. But pretty much everything else, like the Bristol box kite, there was a beautiful thing that James Fox, his character, flew called an Antoinette 4. There was an Avro triplane that Terry Thomas's character flew. I mean, beautiful aircraft, and many of those are flying with the Shuttleworth collection. It's just a wonderful film, and it was only that the French were real spoil sports and wouldn't let them film they're flying over Paris that they had to do some slightly nasty animation stuff. But otherwise, I think it's just a wonderful film. The flying sequences are fabulous. And, Terry Thomas and Eric Sykes in the same film together.
Any film with Terry Thomason is a winner in my in my book.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good. Well, hopefully we've given you some nice ideas for films. What about TV, Roy? I don't know if you picked a TV one. Did you?
I did pick a TV. Well, it's on YouTube, but it's a documentary, and we've spoken about it loads. It's the documentary about the Daily Mail air race. I don't want to go into it too much because there were a number of things. Again, like I'm a member of Amazon Prime, and if you look on Amazon for aviation, a lot of people don't know they've only got Amazon Prime because they think to get next day delivery. I don't know, but they do have some amazing aviation documentaries, so go check that out if you haven't, and you're just paying that money for the deliveries. But my favourite show was about the Daily Mail air race, 1969 Daily Mail air race. It's on YouTube. We'll put links to that. We did a whole podcast on it in the last series. And we didn't stop talking about it, so you probably know about it. But I'm the sort of person who very rarely reads anything twice or watches anything twice. And I've watched that documentary, I think 3 or 4 times now in the last year. So it's so brilliant. Go check it out.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. That's made my day. I've actually gone for a program that was on Channel 4 in 2018, Flying Across Britain, which was Arthur Williams, who I'm sure most people will be aware of, ex-Royal Marine, uses a wheelchair and got into flying, flies his beautiful Piper Cub. And he did this wonderful flight around the smaller airfields of Britain. And just his enthusiasm for the general aviation scene in that is just absolutely fantastic. The filming is absolutely beautiful as well. Lots of sort of aviation-related stories. So I think it's a 4-part series. It was on Channel 4 in 2018. I think you can also get that now on Amazon. And just a couple of other programs, actually, a couple of recent ones, actually. Chitty Flies Again, another Channel 4 thing, which Tony Hoskins, who's a great supporter of ours and who's also restoring a Spitfire, he played a huge part in that. It was a lovely, lovely uplifting film or TV show. And I don't know how many people are old enough to remember, and some of these are still on YouTube. Do just seek them out to see what I grew up with. Whirlybirds, which was, it was like the Adventures of Lassie, but with helicopters.
It was a Bell 47, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think they were Bell 47s.
There was actually, when I learned to fly,
there
was an aircraft which was Golf Whiskey Uniform Kilo, I think, which was one of the Whirlybirds. It was based down in Goodwood when I was learning to fly there. It was...
I thought you meant you learned to fly watching Whirlybirds.
Oh, yeah. It was an American, sort of early 1960s American thing. Never enough air action in them, ever. The other one that was very similar was Ripcord. Do you remember this? Where I think there were Cessna 172s and various different types of Cessna, and they always parachuted in to rescue people. Again, it was like Skippy or Flipper, but with airplanes and parachutists instead of a kangaroo or a dolphin. Those are lovely things just to have a look at on YouTube, just to see the sort of aviation-related programs that were being made back in the day. Jess, what about you? Again, I think I can guess where you go with your favourite aviation.
Well. So I've got several. I've got one drama series, one animation series.
Oh,
and slightly tenuous, but I wanted to get it in, and one documentary. So my drama, not many people may remember this, or maybe lots will, I don't know, because it was quite short-lived, was Airline.
That's the one.
Oh, yes.
From 1982, Roy Marsden, Ruskin Air Services.
Yes.
It's about the Berlin airlift, so just after the war. And
another lockdown.
Another lockdown, featuring Dakota DC-3s, and in fact one in particular which we on this pod know quite well because it's based at Dunsfold and owned by a future guest of ours, Mike Woodley, who we will talk about in other we've mentioned other capacities, because he's just taken ownership of 2 ex-BA 747s, Dunsfold. So that's all very exciting. So that's one airline which Rob and I used to watch at home when we were younger.
We did.
And we hummed the theme tune.
And still do.
You might hear a bit of later. Incessantly.
Yeah, good. Good. Well done.
The documentary, this was, I mean, there are billions of documentaries on but I had to go for Black Buck, Operation Black Buck, which is the Channel 4 doc on, obviously, the Vulcan raid on the Falklands. And then I've just thought of this, actually. It's a bit tenuous, but it kind of is aviation. Thunderbirds.
Yes.
Which I think was possibly my all-time favourite thing ever when I was growing up. And I watched the series probably on their third or fourth repeat. Rob watched them when they were first released.
I did.
But
so still watching
Thunderbirds. And Thunderbird 2 was my favourite.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great show.
But Scott Tracy was my favourite character.
And he was Thunderbird 1, of course.
He was Thunderbird 1, of course.
Well done. Good ones, Jez. Good selection. Yeah, Thunderbirds is irreplaceable, unbeatable. Absolutely. And what about our pilot, Jim?
Well, I'm just going to go for the 1, as I thought that was the rules.
That was the rule.
I'm going to say...
I have to edit this very heavily.
How very dull of you.
Yeah.
My favourite TV was... it was a very, very well done, I think, attempt at the book Piece of Cake, which was on, must be 20 years ago, about a fictional Second World War squadron moving around Europe, and all the flying and hilarious japes and scrapes that they all got into, including flying under bridges. Mr. Hanna, I believe, flew the actual the aircraft under a bridge for that one. But yes, no, it's a wonderful sort of nostalgic look at what it would have been like to have been one of the lads on a squadron during the Second World War. So, Piece of Cake. It's beautifully filmed. Lots of great flying sequences in it, and a good story.
And currently,
I don't remember that at all.
Currently on YouTube.
You should find it, Jez. Piece of Cake was really good, and right over the street. Moving on to books, I will get to my favourite book in a minute, but I really think we must flag up this book, which I ordered for the Top Landing Gear library, which I assemble in my own study, which is this lovely thing, Flying High in the Sunlit Silence, The Aviation Art of Jack Berry. He's this the young kid, Jack, who has autism, mad on aeroplanes. And he's done this book of of his favorite aircraft. The illustrations are absolutely breathtaking. They are real art, beautifully done. And he's got well-known pilots and people involved in aviation to write an article about each of the aircraft in this stunning book. So please, everyone, do order it. Flying High in the Sunlit Silence. It's absolutely beautiful. All the proceeds go to Jack's 3 favorite aviation-related charities. There are forces charities there as well. It's absolutely beautiful. Last time I looked, he was the right near the top of the bestsellers list, and I think he actually was number 1 in history of art books, which is absolutely lovely. So that is a stunner. But my favourite book is Empire of the Clouds, written by James Hamilton Patterson, who's also agreed to be a guest in future. It's subtitled When Britain's Aircraft Ruled the World. It's a wonderful story. His own story about having been a plane spotter as a boy back in the 50s when kind of Britain was really leading the way in aviation, but then loses its way, its funding, its government support, the TSR2 debacle, the Duncan Sands white paper, when everything sort of just goes downhill, and we never have since got our place back at the top of the aviation ladder. I have to say, Alan Pollock gets a mention in it. He contributes to the book, but also Alan's story of flying through Tower Bridge is all there. It's all very much part of that era when everyone was just getting fed up with the way the RAF and the aviation industry in this country was being treated. And what I love about James's writing, he is a beautiful writer. He's also a poet, and he writes with real passion, but there's anger in there. There's real anger about how could we lose our way quite so dramatically. So Empire of the Clouds is my favorite aviation book, although there are many. Of course, we've had many authors on this podcast, so it's always difficult to say it's not one of them. But I pick Empire of the Clouds because of the wonderful way it tells a story about the British aircraft industry.
Are there pictures?
Yeah. There are loads of pictures. Yeah, we always
I've got it. It's on my bedside table on the list to read.
Good. I gave each of you a copy, of course, for
You did.
another Christmas present.
But seeing as I still haven't finished Harrier 809.
Yes, I've had it in my bag today.
I've got somewhere to go yet.
All right, Jez. Books for you, Jez?
Well, I mean, again, I am pretty obvious on these. I've read lots of aviation books, but the one that I mentioned before, and I keep coming back to, which probably tops the list, is joint first. Obviously, there's not more than one. Falcon 607. Because I love it. It's a brilliant book. I've read it at least half a dozen times. And I think also a different kind of book and written in a different way, but incredibly moving, First Light by Geoffrey Wellam.
Oh, absolutely.
Which I think is just an
lovely
absolute
book.
classic. And whether you're particularly interested in history or aviation history or even the war, I think the way he writes this book is... just an absolute joy. Actually, he's not a writer. He's just he was a boy when he wrote this. Wrote his thoughts down. It's a brilliant book, and so I think Vulcan 6-7 or First Light for me as books.
Nice one, Roy.
Yeah, I agree that they are both stunning books. Love them. I remember something that's very recently come out. It was actually a lockdown project for Robert Hastings. Author of Fatherland of Munich. It's V2, just come out, been a big bestseller. You may have got it for Christmas. It's slightly tenuous aviation link, maybe. It's a World War II thriller about a German rocket engineer, a former actress turned British spy, and the whole Nazi rocket program. It's fiction, but the aviation references, regarding like the Spitfires tipping the V rockets are in there.
Yes.
The whole V program is actually incredible. It's super dark in terms of a lot of it was built on slave labor, but the engineers who built this were they were aiming for the stars. That was their plan rather than to bomb people. But
they all got nabbed afterwards, didn't they, by the Americans?
Yeah, and some I think
Werner von Braun, famously,
Well, he's in the book. He's and it was Robert Harris, not Robert Hastings. Just for anyone who's
good. Sorry, yes, Robert Harris. Yeah,
but it's a great book. I read it after Christmas, same time as you, I think. And
totally,
it's excellent.
It's just it's a brilliant read and a real page turner and great fun.
Talking about page turners, I have also been reading actually a couple of the books that were written by Rolf Richardson.
Oh, really? Amazing.
Yeah. Coffin Corner, I'm working my way through at the moment. They're great books. They're really good read. Loads of aviation stuff in there. And, they're fun things.
You gave me one for Christmas, Bert, and I have yet to read it. It's on the list underneath the Harrier 809 and various others. Rhapsody in Blue, which I've still not finished.
Yeah. They're fun. Jimbo, what about you for your aviation books?
My book was a surprise to me because I read... first part, Roald Dahl's autobiography, Boy, which I loved because I have connections to India, but I don't go on about them the way you go on about connections.
Well, mine's not a connection.
But it's
my very
then got reading
he's still talking about it.
The second book, Going Solo.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Part 2 of Roald Dahl's autobiography, Going Solo, which is mostly about him joining the RAF at the beginning of the war, flying Tiger Moths, Gladiators, and then Hurricanes, particularly a lot of it in Greece, where he helped with the withdrawal and everything there. It's a fascinating book, written in Roald Dahl's style, but it's about Roald Dahl. And it's just one of the best aviation-based books I've ever read.
Oh, brilliant.
I loved it.
I must get that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No pictures, though.
Oh, that's all right. Well, that's unusual for a Roald Dahl book, actually, isn't it? Lovely.
I'm out.
Oh, those are some great books. There's so many more. I could have added, but anyway, I won't go on. And finally, just sort of web or podcasts or things I recommend. I'll kick this off. There's an absolutely brilliant website all about my favorite airliner, the VC-10. It's called A Little VC Tenderness, www.vc10.net. Jelle Heminger, who I think must be a Dutchman, has done the most fantastic job on that. Every VC10 ever built is mentioned. It's beautifully written up, very readable, but as a reference source as well, it's absolutely brilliant. And my favorite podcast, I think, other than our own, was the one that was out a couple of years ago, maybe last year, on BBC World Service, narrated by Tuppence Middleton, called Spitfire, the People's Plane. It really is the most beautiful series of podcasts. She narrates it beautifully as well. It tells a complete Spitfire story through the perspective and voices of those who were there over the series of design, production service, factory workers to pilots. It's a really, really lovely podcast. So Spitfire, the People's Plane. I thoroughly.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I loved it.
It is fabulous. Jimbo, what about you?
So, well, the website has got to be pprune, which is pprune.org. The pilots, professional pilots rumor network. If you want to know what's going on in the aviation world, that's where you look. And it has everybody's chatting about everything. And podcast wise, I've kind of cheated and gone for a radio show, which I believe is available in podcast format, which is Cabin Pressure.
Oh, good.
Radio
Cabin Pressure.
Radio 4, I think, comedy based on a ridiculously small airline with such young stars as Benedict Cumberbatch, I believe, is one of the one of the stars of it.
Yeah,
it's just the funniest hours of radio. One of the funniest hours of radio you'll hear.
It's written by John Finnemore, isn't it? And he is just
right. Yes,
he's a comedy genius. He's brilliant.
He is a genius
as well.
Yeah.
No,
so Cabin Pressure and Pprune.
Oh, love that, Roy. Any favorite websites for you, or podcasts, or both?
Well, my web thing, which I've started to do more, is YouTube VR. So this is going to be a whole new world for you, Rob. Okay.
I think I know what VR is.
So,
do you mean virtual reality?
Virtual reality. So,
ding dong.
If you have an iPhone or any sort of smartphone, you can buy for about £10 to £20 a VR headset. So that basically, you put your phone in the front of you, and then so it goes in the headset, and then it basically means that your phone is like a cinema screen, and wherever you move your head, you can see.
Oh, fab!
And so there are loads of amazing films on YouTube. So there's one which I was looking at, which was in a Spitfire from Dunkirk to the Dover Cliffs. And so you're sat in the Spitfire with the sound, especially it's great if you put headphones on.
Don't tell him headphones. That'll take hours.
yeah.
Well, anything's even connection to the internet's going to be a bit of a problem.
I'm going to have to come around and show you.
Carry on.
But you just sit there, and everywhere you look down, and you're in the Spitfire, and you look up, and you're looking at the clouds, and you look left, right. You can go 360 degrees.
Getting this,
and there are so many things. I don't understand quite why it hasn't taken off, because it's been around for years now. And as I said, the headsets are a tenner. You need reasonably decent internet connection, but not even you'll be able to do it, Rob. But it's there's loads of stuff on there. There's one where you can fly with the red arrows. There's a great one where they've set up the VR headset with the red arrows going over London. There's some dog fights. There's some sort of computer generated stuff. So for an aviation fan, it really is. I spend so many times when I go to bed at like 9, 10 o'clock thinking I'm going to go to bed, and suddenly it's 1 a.m. in the morning, and I've flown to Paris, and the wife is like, what the hell is going on? Anyway, it's brilliant. It's about £10-15, and we're going to put links to all these on all the socials.
Oh, that's just brilliant. That's fantastic. Did you do yours? I can't remember.
No, I haven't yet, but I can if you like. Well, I'm going to add the VR headset to my, even though I've not seen it yet, and as it's my birthday next weekend.
Hint.
I'm going to add goodness, so it is.
Yes, just to remind you.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that to my birthday list, I think. But my sort of web-based stuff. So website, mainly because I've used it for my quick facts a lot.
Let me guess. British Aerospace.
I'm out.
BAE Systems. Yeah.
So is it quite a
Website.
dull website then?
It's quite dry, but it is absolutely fascinating. The heritage section of the BAE Systems website is brilliant. And it literally has almost every aircraft, obviously built by BAE or one of the companies they sort of encompassed ever. And it's fascinating. So that's great. And then podcast, obviously, as Rob said, that is now as, again, more space than sort of general aviation. 13 Minutes to the Moon, which was a brilliant podcast. There's 2 series presented by Kevin Fong, who actually is an NHS doctor, but has done a lot of TV presenting and also worked for NASA for a while. And it's brilliant. So if it's all really based on, the first series is based on the Apollo missions to the moon, Apollo 11, to the successful moon landing. And there's a second series based on Apollo 13, and it's interviews with all the sort of the characters who are involved. Lots and lots of actuality, sort of footage or audio from mission control. It's absolutely brilliant. And I have to say, I'd forgotten about this, but Rob mentioned The People's Plane, narrated by
Middleton, yeah.
Which I absolutely loved. And in fact, I listened to it sort of in conjunction with 13 Minutes to Me. Both brilliant podcasts. So those are my choices.
Fabulous. Well, I hope that's inspired some of you out there to listen, read, look at some of these things during this slightly tedious lockdown that we're going through. And that should hopefully enable you to get through it with a little more spring in your step. Now, speaking of spring in your step, I'm getting a bit excited because it is time for the Top Landing Gear Lockdown 3 special quiz.
Doesn't your Zoom thing end in a minute, Roy?
Yeah, I think I'm running out of Zoom. Yeah. That's our time limit.
I'm so glad you're all so excited that the quiz is continuing. Has everyone thought about a buzzer for tonight's
More than
episode?
thought about.
Jolly good.
Yeah.
So, all right, Jez, what have you got? I think you gave us a clue to this, did you?
Little clue earlier. Let me just see if I can tee this up. Hang on a second.
Uh-huh.
Hold on.
Love it. That is the theme tune to
Airline by Tony Hatch, 1982. I'll just let this.
Christ,
fade it out.
what are you playing it on? Is that the world's biggest speaker?
This is my iPhone.
Oh, wow.
That's absolutely brilliant. How much of that are you going to play actually when you buzz in? Just
The whole
beginning?
thing.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I've got 35
get it in.
seconds of a 3-minute soundtrack.
Brilliant. I love it.
I'll just cue it back up, and we're ready to go when I can't answer any of the questions.
Good man. James, what have you brought along tonight?
I'm a little bit more minimalist. I'm going for one of our cabin chime call bells from the Boeing.
Good.
Again?
Did you get that?
I mean, if you, I don't think you'll be winning tonight, Jim. I don't think you'll be answering many
For
questions.
once, Mr. Know-it-all isn't going to win.
Yeah.
'cause he
Although
can't-
we have
gonna
yet
have
to hear Roy's
other
buzzer,
things.
which has often been a little wanting.
No, I was looking for the sound of lockdown, and I thought my sound of lockdown would be me doing the bloody washing up, because that's all I seem to have done. I seem to be washing up while the dishwasher's on, and there's still other stuff to go anyway. But I didn't do that. I did during lockdown. One good thing that happened to my band is that BBC Lincoln did a whole virtual reproduction of one of our songs, getting everybody to sing
I
on
love
Zoom.
this song.
It was really good, and they got the BBC
yes.
Philharmonic in.
Brilliant.
So I've got like
Yeah.
a little bit of that. The BBC Philharmonic playing something that was written by Roy Stride.
Oh, wow.
And even better, I'm not singing it.
Oh, shame. That is lovely.
Yeah.
Again, it's almost impossible to hear.
That was the
So I
lovely
think
reference.
Jez has got the winning buzzer. I think, Jez, if you don't win this quiz tonight, there will be questions.
Well, there
Yours
will
is
be
about the only
questions
buzzer I
because
could
I'm
remember.
bound not to, but there we go.
Well, what we want is answers.
Okay.
So here we go. Are you all ready for question 1?
Yep.
And this is all about aviation and entertainment, books, all that kind of stuff that we've just been talking about. Question 1 is a film question. Recreated in the film Aviator, starring Matt Damon as Howard Hughes, what was the name of the massive aircraft that Hughes designed and built? Yes, James.
It was the
Yes,
Spruce
James?
Goose.
It was indeed
It was
the
still the
Spruce
yes.
Goose. You're absolutely right.
I knew that.
Which I flew briefly just once. Jez, you say this every time, but you never buzz in quickly enough.
I buzzed in, but I had my volume turned down.
My
well,
kids say
you're a
that as well.
buffoon again. Yeah. James, do you by any chance know what the proper name, that was the sort of nickname it was given. Do you know what it actually was called? I mean, you still get your point.
It was a Hughes something, wasn't it? It was called the Hughes with a number after it.
Yeah, obviously. It was a Hughes H4 Hercules.
There
It's
you
the
go,
original
Hercules.
There you go. But you get your point for Spruce Goose. That's
No, I
what I
didn't
was
know
looking for. Absolutely spot on. Okay, a book question. Are you ready with your buzzers, everybody?
Yeah.
Question number 2. Which legendary aviator wrote the book Wings on My Sleeve? Yes. Yes, Jez, that's a big announcement. Brothers,
I'm just going to let it keep playing until I don't know the answer.
you don't know the answer.
Douglas Bader.
No, deliberate buzzing when you don't know the answer is almost tantamount to a point away, but I won't. Anyone else got any ideas?
Any hints?
Wings on my sleeve. Well,
It must
he's
have been
flown
Navy.
more aircraft types than anybody else
wait,
ever in the entire world.
Wait. Oh, bloody, I'm recording. Buzzer.
You've recorded every
I've lost
buzzer,
the
have you?
buzzer.
Oh, this is pathetic. Yes, Roy.
Would it be Winky Brown?
It's Eric Winkle Brown. You're
Oh.
absolutely right. Well done, boys. That's shame on you. It's a if you haven't read it, you've got to read it. Yeah, he flew 487 types of aircraft. Winkle Brown made the first carrier deck landings and all sorts of different aircraft. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so it's 1 to Roy, 1 to James. Jez yet to get off the mark, but question 3 might level the scores. It's a television question, Jez. Which American action series from the 1980s featured a Bell 222 helicopter in the title role? Yes, Roy. I think that was you. It is Airwolf.
Hey!
You're absolutely right.
Wasn't even
Airwolf.
born in the 80s.
Well done. Can you remember the name of the guy in it?
Oh,
The star of the show?
no.
It was Jan Michael Vincent.
Oh.
And I think there's a shot at the beginning in the opening title sequence of him playing a cello. It's just bizarre. And for bonus, do you remember?
Yeah. It was the
bonus
holy
point.
trinity of those shows, wasn't it? There was Knight Rider, Airwolf, and Street Hawk.
Yes, that's exactly right. And Roy, a little bonus. Can you sing the theme tune, or can anyone else sing the theme tune? That'll do.
Yeah, that's
a very. I would have sung exactly the same. It would have sounded a lot more out of tune.
But you didn't.
I think that was a loaded question.
So Roy gets. I'll tell you what. That bonus will come into play if the scores are level at the end.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So after 3 questions, Roy is on 2 with an option for a third. Jez yet to score. James on 1. Famous film quotes. Now you got to be quick on your buzzers with this one. In which film would you hear? Son, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. Yes, Roy.
Top Gun.
Top Gun is the right answer. Well done. It was said by Maverick's CEO, Stinger. Yeah. We're looking forward to Top Gun 2 coming up. Hopefully this year, aren't we? Can't wait for that one.
That is, also, if you've not done that, put the headphones on, crank it up, and watch that trailer because it's the most exciting 5 minutes of your life.
Amazing that that's mentioned Top Gun as their favourite aviation.
It was.
Well, we weren't allowed to. I thought we
Too
weren't
obvious.
allowed to. We took the 2 banned ones with Top Gun and
Battle of Britain.
And Dam Busters.
Battle of Britain.
Yeah.
And Dan Busters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair
The
dues.
three.
Everyone's
banned
seen
ones.
that. If you haven't seen that, then literally you shouldn't be listening to this podcast.
Please carry on listening and watch it afterwards. Okay, so Roy is racing away here. 3 to Roy, 1 to James. Jez with the loudest buzzer still to get off the mark. Right now, another film question. In the Airport series of films, can you name the featured aircraft in each of the 4 films? I'll give you a point for each. I'll name the film, and then you need to buzz in with the aircraft. So let's start off with the original one from 1970. What was the featured aircraft in Airport? Jez.
Boeing 707.
Absolutely right. Well done. It was a Boeing 707 of Trans-Global Airlines. George Kennedy, do you remember him? He was Joe Petroni. I think he featured in every single one of the Airport films. The next one was Airport 75. Which aircraft featured in Airport 75? That Jez again.
I'm guessing that. 747.
You're absolutely right, Jez. Jez, you are catching up. You've moved into second place ahead of James Cartner. But I'm not sure if James's buzzer is working. What's going on there?
No, just not listening to it. Not listening.
He didn't know. He did know the answer.
That was, by the way, the airline was Columbia Airlines. It was Flight 409, and I don't remember. A light aircraft crashes into the flight deck, and it all goes horribly pear-shaped. Airport 77. Which aircraft is an? Yes, who was that? James. I think that might have been you. Absolutely not.
Concorde.
Incorrect.
Concorde.
Incorrect. It was not Concorde. Airport 77. Who remembers that? It was a hijacked aircraft which crashed in the...
I'm trying my buzzer.
Yes, Jera.
DC-8.
Incorrect. That leaves you, Roy. Airport 77.
Was it 747 again?
It is a 747 again. Well done. Absolutely right. It was. Hang
on, I already said 747. So surely...
No. Well, you either know it or you don't. And you didn't. And it was a private 747. The actual 747 was the very same one they used in the previous film. And finally, the worst entire run of airport films, just dreadful. It was known as Airport 79 in the USA, but by the time it came to the UK, it was called Airport 80. Which aircraft?
Bing bong.
All right, James, I'm going to push it over to you. I think. Yes, James.
That was Concorde.
That was Concorde. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it was diabolical.
It crashed into an ice field or something. They all got off.
Oh, it was just. I mean, it really. I don't know how they got to make it.
Which Concorde did they use?
It was one. Actually, it was a good question. It was one of the Air France Concordes, but at the time it actually belonged to Sud Aviation or whatever, and it was actually the very Concorde that crashed in Paris.
No,
the very same Concorde. It was Foxtrot Bravo Tango Sierra Charlie. So it was involved in 2 hideous episodes, that aeroplane. Airport 80 disaster. So well done. So at the end of that round, the scores are James has 2, Jez has 2, but out in the lead is Roy with a total of 4. I call that an unassailable lead as we go into the last 2 questions, but there is an option for more should we need them. And we're doing books. Stand by. What is the name of the book by John Peters and John Nichol about their experiences during Operation Desert Storm in the Gulf War? Yes, James.
Tornado Down.
Really?
Tornado Down.
It was me.
It wasn't
first. I was first on the buzzer.
No way. You weren't. This is a delay. There's a delay.
It was Tornado Down.
Yeah,
I had
right.
it.
I think really nobody should get the points.
Or I might give you 1 each because it's not going to make an awful lot of difference, quite frankly. And a little extra question here, and we've covered this a little bit this evening, but let's try and get the definitive answer. Which books that we've already reviewed on Top Landing Gear has Jez still not finished? Yes, Jez.
Rhapsody in Blue and Harrier 809.
Anyone else want to add to that?
All of them.
Correct. That's the answer I've got down, James. That is absolutely right. Well done. That's a brilliant quiz. You've all done really...
You
really, really well. So let's look at the final scores. Bringing up the rear, an appalling performance. Couldn't even answer his own question correctly with 3 points. Jez, we've got a joint tied for first place on that final question with James and Roy on 4 each. But Roy did get the bonus for the Airwolf theme, so that bonus has come into play. Roy,
you can't ask a singer to sing a song as one of the clues. What about getting someone to fly an airplane to a building?
It was safe. He always had that point. That was made clear at the time that if it was a tie-break, that would win. So, Roy, you are our first winner of 2021. Many congratulations to you. What
I don't
a
know what to
quiz.
say. Amazing. That was great fun.
Well done, Roy.
Is that
the first time you've won, Roy?
To be honest, these quizzes are so much more fun when you win. I won the Battle of Britain one, which I was very pleased with.
Oh, did you?
My two skill sets, TV
well done.
and the Battle of
Good.
Britain.
Well done. I'm very proud of all of you. And did you notice the missing theme?
There was
about Malaya.
Oh my God.
Yes.
There was what?
Malaya.
About Malaya.
No, Malaya.
I think that's gone now. I think we've moved on.
I don't believe that
really?
for a second.
Well, it will return, but it won't necessarily be in every quiz.
I think our fan needs it.
Yeah.
I think
he does.
He'll be upset,
especially the Malayan one. The Malayan one's be devastated.
It will come back because obviously during the Malayan emergency, 1948-61, there were many firsts and lasts in terms of aircraft types. So, it will reappear. Don't you worry. But it might not be in every single quiz. Well, guys, what a podcast. It's been great to get back on the air again. It's all been a little bit quiet, hasn't it? And lockdown has made things difficult for everybody. But we hope that this will help people get through the next few weeks, potentially months, with our suggestions. And
if this is all you've got, I actually feel quite sorry.
Well, obviously, there's loads more too. There's loads
all
more
we've
too.
got.
Yeah, it is. I have to say, also, during our quiet time, we have received some really exciting invitations over the last couple of months to visit and record some podcasts as soon as lockdown allows. Can't say too much at this stage, but there might be a bit of flying involved.
Yeah, absolutely
perhaps
amazing invitations.
Oh, we really have. And thanks to those people. So we're really looking forward to that. Before all that, of course, we will be putting up the episodes we recorded on our trip to Lincolnshire last year. And when's that likely to happen, Roy, do you think?
I want to put them out in April when I think we're going to be able to travel to Lincolnshire because we've done so many amazing places. I'd love to put them out so that people can immediately go there the next weekend because
I see. So use them as sort of promo. And we will get together to sort of top and tail those live as well, won't we?
Yeah, totally.
It's
going to run in the same way the last series did. We will do an episode ourselves, which will be about the interview, and then we'll run the interview as a full flap. So, yeah.
Oh, I see. Love it. So it will still be a quiz. That's all I'm really checking out. Good. Brilliant.
I'd forgotten about full flaps. How exciting.
I know.
Yeah.
I've got 8 full flaps ready to, well, not ready to go. That's the problem. I've got about 80 hours of audio to go through. But it's on it. You know, that Lincoln trip was brilliant, and it's going to be an amazing year for Top Landing Gear, I think, 2021.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
Come on.
Thank you for all your support, and thank you for listening. We're going to carry on trying to bring you the best aviation fun nonsense that we can.
Nonsense we can guarantee. Absolutely. Brilliant. Yes, thanks to everyone out there who's been so loyal and listening. Even while we haven't been making new podcasts, people still be downloading. It's been fantastic. So that's looking ahead. In the meantime, you can, of course, still listen to all our podcasts from Series 1 and 2. Basically, they're there in perpetuity for you to keep.
Well said.
Thank you very much. And please do get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at Top Landing Gear, and email us with your questions for our expert, James Cartner. That's info@toplandinggear.com, info@toplandinggear.com, 2 Gs.
2 Gs.
Oh, yeah, boys.
Remember that.
And however you're listening to us, please recommend us to your friends and family, and do leave a review, especially if you've enjoyed it. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening, and bye for now. This is Top Landing Gear.